Hello and welcome to this video, and this is a very special video because this is going to be my top 30 progressive rock bands as chosen by my patrons. So without my knowing, my lovely patrons over at Patreon have been getting together and they have been voting on who their favourite progressive rock band is. Then they got the results in, and then they did some statistical analysis and all the stuff you're supposed to do. And they came up as a group with their 30 progressive rock bands. They did it for fun. They passed it on to me to see what I thought. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to do a video here. This is the summation of everything I've ever wanted to achieve on this channel. And so what you're about to see is a very special video where I go through my patrons' 30 favourite, greatest progressive rock band ranked from 30 to 1. But not only that, they're going to be taking part in this, plus I have a ton of special guests, plus we're going to be getting out of this studio and getting out into the real world. This is the epic of all epics. This is the ultimate ranking video of all time. Are you ready, everybody, for the 30 greatest progressive rock band of all time?
Greatest prog bands that's chosen by the patrons of Andy Edwards. Sit back and get ready for the prog ride of your life. Of your life.
Okay, progressive rock bands. What I've done is I've broken through the fourth wall. I'm on the other side now. This is the view that I see. I've gone through the camera and I'm now on the other side. And I'm about to leave this warm and lovely studio and I'm about to go into the outside world on my journey. No, not even my journey, my quest towards the hierarchy of progressive rock goodness. Are you ready to come? I'm a little bit scared, I must be honest. Right, let's go. I'm about to leave the studio. Come on. I'm going to go now. I'm not scared of this. Goodbye, Greg. We'll see you soon. Look after the place.
We're not in Kansas anymore. We must be over the rainbow.
Hi guys, in this video, we are going to check out 10 best places to visit in Kansas. From a geographical point, Kansas is situated in the middle of the United States. Because of many reasons that Kansas is often referred to as the heart of America. The state boasts the beauty of the Great Plains and plenty of historical importance. Many people see Kansas as an escape location due to the Wizard of Oz. However, there are plenty of amazing spots to visit.
With us today, a big day in the Prog corner. Andy, thank you for joining us. How you doing over there?
Oh, I'm feeling rough.
Yeah,
I got the lurgy.
Boys and girls, oh my goodness. You know, it seems preposterous, right? All the comments that I was getting when I was posting this episode on my socials, the US versus the UK, one person commented, shortest episode ever. You know, at first blush, I give it to you. 8 out of my 10 favorite bands of all time are from the UK. So I get it. It sounds like the deck is stacked, but, you know, me and Scott are here to defend our beloved United States of America against this British onslaught of greatness. I think we've got enough receipts to do it. I think we can fend you off. I don't think it's a slam dunk whatsoever. What says you, Andy Edwards?
You're not going to throw Kansas at me, are you?
Absolutely.
Kansas, that's the best you've got.
That's all they've got. That's all they've got.
I've just kicked it from under you. And then when they're desperate, crack the sky. Crack the bloody sky.
Don't you cry no more. Wow, wow. I love that they're the opposite of, you know, some bands that just get right to the hook of the song. They take you on this journey. They take the time to make it come alive for you. You feel like you're a sailor on a boat or a pirate on a boat. You feel like you're on the point of no return. You feel like you're blowing in the wind, with dust in the wind. The melodies, the lyrics, to me, this is why this band is one of the greatest bands of our time. And I'm so lucky to be alive when I can enjoy this band. Still, I mean, 5 decades of touring and recording. I mean, this band is still very alive today and doing and making incredible music. Kansas was one of the first bands to introduce progressive rock in the United States. They wanted to be different, and they were, even amongst the prog bands. Left Overture. Everyone knows Carry On My Wayward Son. Everyone. And if you don't, we can't be friends. The opening line of Carry On My Wayward Son is this gorgeous, harmonized a cappella right in your face, like, shut the fuck up and listen. And you do. Like, you know, this is Kansas. I was 14 years old when I met Kerry Livgren. Him and his wife sat 4 pews up from my family at church. And my dad, told me, if you want to do music, Eva, you go talk to that guy. And so I was kind of intimidated because he had his glasses and his big handlebar mustache, and he was just kind of kept to himself. So I was like, but I was a 14-year-old, so high on life, who cares? Walked right up to him and said, I'd really like to show you some of my music, could you listen to it? And he was just so nice. Him and Vicky were just so kind to me. And actually I got to go out to their studio, played them my songs, and I just remember sitting in there looking at the wall of just albums, and the platinum albums and the gold and the Grammys and the all his guitars, and I just was kind of like, Kansas.
Okay, so we leave the safe confines of my studio on a quest to find the 30 greatest progressive rock bands of all time. And at number 30 we have Kansas, perhaps the United States of America's greatest prog band. But now we go to visit another country, because if there's one country that produced some incredible progressive rock bands, it was Italy. Now, I'm not so much of an expert on Italian prog, and yet my patrons have voted at number 29 one of the great Italian progressive rock bands. So, as I'm on my way to my next port of call, I'm going to pass over to one of my favourite music YouTubers on the planet, Mr. Scott Larday, at the Prog Corner. Now, he's a very shy man because he's American, but I'm sure he'll come out of his shell for this video. He's said he will support me here. I've got a lot of people on my side on this one, and he's going to tell you all about the Italian progressive rock band that is at number 29 on our list. So I am now going to access the Progressive Rock Network. Scott, are you there? Scott, can you hear me, Scott?
Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott, and today, man, I'm talking to you fools about Premiata Fornaria Marconi, one of the three bands that make up the Italian Big Three, the Big Three of Italian prog. Yeah, man, it's PFM. They're number one. You got Le Orme. We're going to get Andy into these bands too. And Banco del Marturo Soccorso, I love them. And then the greatest of all Italian prog albums is, of course, Zarathustra by Musea Rosenbach. But today, man, we're talking about PFM. This was the only Italian band I knew about when I was a kid growing up because Greg Lake signed them to his Manticore label, and they put out a English album in 1973 called Photos of Ghosts with lyrics by Pete Sinfield. But man, I am telling you, it is the two albums that dropped in 1972, which is why I'm here talking about PFM, man. Storia de un Minuto. Just incredible. Wow, 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 wow. And then they followed it up in 1972 with an even better album, Per Inimico. Who do they think they are, man? They think they're Yes or Gentle Giant putting two albums out in the same year, and they're both great. So who are PFM and why are they so amazing? Well, it is Franco Musida. He was the lead singer and guitar player. They had a second singer originally called Flavio Promoli. He played keyboards and vocals. Later on, after 1975 on the Chocolate Kings, they added a guy singing in English, none other than Bernardo Lanzetti from Acqua Fragile. Again, trying to break into the U.S. market. PFM was doing a lot of shows in the U.S. Greg Lake and Manticore were really trying hard to break them. But, the deck was stacked against a band singing in a different language. And I'm sorry, Italian prog always sounds better in Italian. So it was never going to happen. They formed in 1969 and put out an album called Quelli. I guess that was a whole different name, but they changed their name to PFM shortly thereafter and just put out a bunch of great albums. Hey, and they're not done yet, man. Franz Di Cioccio, the drummer, he's still in the band and they're still going strong. They dropped an album in 2021 called I Dream of Electric Sheep. Fantastic album, lots of guests like Steve Hackett and Ian Anderson. So PFM's not dead, man. They bring in all those flavors, those Mediterranean flavors, but they were listening to British prog too. That's what I love about Italian prog, man. They use all those different influences. They listen to it all. The romanticism of opera hangs over everything. And all these bands, there's definitely that emotional bend to the singing, which you really don't get a whole lot with the British prog. And another thing I love about Italian prog, man, is the fact that, sometimes I get really sick and tired of lyrics. Lyrics that just aren't any good. I like Bob Dylan's lyrics, but I'm not listening to his music just to get good lyrics. Not going to happen. So here we go. Italian prog is kind of the best way to do it because I can just imagine that the lyrics are amazing and fantastic. Even if they're not, I'd never know, man. I don't speak Italian, so it really does help me out in my appreciation of Italian prog. But PFM, man, we're going to get the whole world into PFM. Yeah, it's 50 years too late, but it's, better late than never. Italian prog outside of the UK is the best country on earth for prog rock. I'm absolutely obsessed with Italian prog, and we're going to get Andy and all his followers obsessed with PFM, and it starts right now, today, with Per Inimico. You need this album. You gotta have this album. It's one of the best prog albums of all time. Yeah, and it's sung in Italian, so take that. Anyway, guys, I love you. Peace of the Middle East, free Tibet. God save the king. Save King Chucky. Oh, Chucky needs your saving. Yes, he does. All the way over there in the UK. Bring that boy to America. Yeah, bring him to America. He can swim. Make him swim to America. It'll be good for that boy. And then we'll lay hands on him. Oh, we got spells and incantations for that boy. And then we're going to dance with snakes.
Oh, yeah, the snakes are going to be dancing. We're dancing with them rattlesnakes, and he's going to be just fine. King Chucky's going to be just A-OK. I love you guys. We'll see you. Peace.
A big thank you to Scott for doing that wonderful, albeit a little bit introverted, description and explanation and appreciation of the great Italian progressive rock band PFM. We now move on to our first British band on the list, and we're on the run. We're not on the run, we're on the move. Well, we're sort of on the run. In front of you, you can see, which may give some of you a clue to where we are, one of the biggest brick-built viaducts in the UK, built in the Victorian era, but we're not going to see that wonderful build. We're turning up into this road here, travelling up to the football ground, and we're going to visit a very special road in my history, but also a road that relates to the next band that we're going to be talking about. So I just went down the wrong road. Right, so let's start again. This road on the left here is very important to me. Right, and you will see as we turn into it, it is called College Road. I don't know if you saw that. And as we drive down to this historic little nook of Kidderminster, there's Scholars Court. And I'm going to pull up at the end of this road here. This sign commemorates the fact that Kidderminster College used to be on this site. It actually used to be there. That used to be a big theatre, and I used to teach music here alongside a bunch of incredible players that had played with everybody in the old days. It was my connection to the scene around here as a very young man. On this spot here, I met Clifford T. Ward, I met Robert Plant for the first time. I can remember we once did a concerto for car and rock band, and it was Robert Plant's car placed down here, and we had someone inside playing the car horn to a score of music. When the theatre was here on this site, it also hosted, back in the late 60s, the band that we're about to look at now. And this band was a band which not only pioneered progressive rock, but also pioneered jazz rock fusion. It's a band that's got a little bit forgotten, but we're going to now look at the incredible work of John Heisman, Dick Hextall-Smith, Chris Farlow in the band Colosseum.
I've been with Georgie Fame for 6 months, and then I went to John Mayall. And I came to the conclusion that there was nobody to play with. I was stuck. Nobody running a singing band, a real singing band, you know, where the singer would ask me to play for them in those days, because my style had become kind of set in a very busy kind of area, which was a bit sort of tricky. So I went on holiday with Barbara to Rome, to Italy. Barbara had a cousin there. I stood on the Palatine Hill overlooking the Forum, and I said to Barbara, I'm going back to England, I'm going to form a band and I'm going to call it Colosseum. There was the Colosseum laid out in front of me. I got back to the UK and I phoned Dick Hextall-Smith and said, I'm going to form this mythical band of ours. Now, while we were with Graham Bond together, we had often sat in the back of vehicles travelling saying, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a band where there's no drug addicts, no crazies, no madmen? Because, you know, Graham was driving us crazy. And we talked about this, but I rang him up and said, right, you want to form that band? And he said, yes. I said, right, we're in. And I phoned the rest of the guys who were subsequently to become members of the band. We held auditions for a guitarist because there wasn't an obvious one. The band was formed, and we did our first gig in Scarborough, where they had to winch the organ into the gig. Because the only way in for the organ was halfway up the side of this building.
Take me back to Doomsday.
Take me back, take me back, take me back.
composing, in her 90s, as many composers have done. And this means that there's no end, really. As long as we can be creative, which is what we've done all our lives, we are in a very, very lucky, fortunate situation. We've organised our lives so that we didn't have to compromise. We could make our own music, create our own public. I get the feeling when I'm seeing you play, you forget Parkinson's, that somehow you get so caught up in the moment of playing.
Oh yeah.
That your body has a power which you almost can't imagine it still has.
I do forget about it. I think about the music.
Welcome to Vienna, and welcome to tomorrow.
So, Amon Düül II, or the second, I didn't even know there was a first for years. I only knew of Amon Düül II, and despite some people's concerns about the excitement found or not found, I found them just exhilarating. The mix of English and German languages through the music, and the absolute clamour of sounds that was coming from this band. It just sounded really amateur and frightening and joyous in a way. It made me think, yeah, you know what, maybe one day, maybe I could have a go at that. And here I am, being dull in a garden. But thankfully I've still got Amon Düül II and the first one, who I found out was slightly more psychedelic than the first iteration, or which was the second, which I first came across. And it was fine, it was okay, but it was a bit too sort of, And then they weren't the same band, they were two separate bands. They just fell out of the commune, and I thought, right, well, you have that and I'll have this, and off they went. And Amon Düül II were a real excitement for me for many, many, many years. Until they came out with, what the hell was it now? No, but they didn't come out with a bad one. I don't know what Andy thinks about them. He needs to go back and listen again. I feel it.
I want to form a Rush cover band, just the girls.
Dude, does it have to be Rush?
Answer after you listen.
Oh, and here comes Steve, our guitarist. Clockwork Angels.
Oh, right.
Look at that little nerdy fella. Ooh, those big clouds.
Hi, I'm Mark Cunningham. I'm a member of Forgotten Gods, and we're in the recording studio recording our first album. Andy Edwards has asked us to talk about Rush and why we like Rush. The first thing I ever heard by Rush was the 2112 album. A friend of mine loaned me it, and I was absolutely blown away by the first sight. I just kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And pretty soon after that, I was in the little record shop in the town that I lived in, which is Irvine in Ayrshire, and a single had come out, and it was by Rush, and that was the first physical thing that I bought, and that single was Closer to the Heart, and on the B-side it had Bastille Day and Temple of Syrinx, and I played it to death. Absolutely loved it.
Hi, I'm Dave, drummer with Forgotten Gods. Neil Peart, obviously a huge inspiration in every way to rock drummers everywhere. I liked early Rush, but I really got into it from Moving Pictures onwards, and it's been a bit of an obsession ever since.
For a technical incident, we'll try this again.
Hello, it's Steve, Forgotten Gods. Rush.
Jowett, and I play bass. Rush has been a feature of my adult life all the way through, from school where I learnt Anthem and Bastille Day and the start of 2112 to play with some pals there, seeing 2112 at the Birmingham Odeon in what was 2076 was it? We have assumed control and the audience blind us. They certainly did assume control. Hemispheres, I remember going to see that at Stafford Bingley Hall, the long walk to the cattle shed as it actually was. Standing there watching the film of Hemispheres, my favourite track at the time, starting and the two halves of the brain turning round and realising my girlfriend had fainted and having to carry her out to the Red Cross. So I never got to see it. And then, of course, Moving Pictures and the growing success of the band with Tom Sawyer and Spirit Radio prior to that. Through the 80s, I kind of fell out of love with prog a little bit until I joined ARC in 87, and Steve Harris lent me the live album Show of Hands, which showed me what I'd been missing. And it went on through there. Every time they come over, I'd get to see them if I could. Picked up that love again. I remember we played Montreal with IQ in 2004. Andy had just joined the band, and Lawrence had got tickets for a couple of us to go along to see Rush, and I offered it to me, and I said, no, Andy, it would be really nice for him to have that opportunity. So hopefully you enjoyed that, mate. Then from there, I wanted to go to see the band at Red Rocks. I thought that'd be such an amazing venue in 2007, I think it was. Unfortunately, that was the beginning of a whole series of problems for me, financial, with the crash and losing money and blah, blah, blah. And so I never got to go, but I did buy a t-shirt, which I still have. Neil's books were another element of the band. Ghost Rider in particular mirrored issues that I had, and although I didn't get 2 years out on a motorbike to deal with them, it was great to take his perspective. And then up to Clockwork Angels, I saw that in Birmingham, and the last tour, we didn't know at the time, of course, but going to see Rush in New Orleans, an amazing experience. So they've always been there. Even with IQ, I remember there's one track, on Counterparts, that sounds a little bit like an IQ track from Ever, but I'm sure that's pure coincidence. Terry Brown, the contact there on Are You Sitting Comfortably, who produced IQ's album, the one that I met the band on when ARC played support. Always been there, and they just seem like they're really nice guys as well, that produce great music. And Geddy, what a bass player. So yeah, thank you guys. It's been and remains a blast listening to your music.
Thank you, John, for doing that for me. That was a lovely gesture. I've known John for over 20 years. I've done so many sessions with him, gigs, playing in all sorts of different progressive rock bands over the years, and he has supported me so much in my prog doings, if that's the right word for it. The next port of call is actually a rehearsal room. This is what prog gentlemen do at the weekend. We go to rehearsal rooms and we rehearse prog. There's many bands out there doing it. Some of them are doing it for money, most of them are doing it for love. Right, so we're at the rehearsal room now. Now, today's rehearsal does have in it Mr. John Jowett. And it is with the guys from the progressive rock band Freedom to Glide. I'm very happy to be able to give them a shout out in this video. So shall we go into the studio and see what happens? Come on, let's have a go. I'll pull you out of your stand there. Right, let's actually go out. So here we go. Here we got Low Street Studios. Let's see, shall we see what's going on? I don't think the guys are here yet, so I might just go in and see what's happening, shall we? Come on then, let's open the door. Hey! This is Peter from the band Freedom to Glide, so I'm not the first here.
No, you're not.
Right, I'm doing a video on the 30 greatest progressive rock bands. The next chapter is going to be about Focus.
Focus?
Do you like Focus?
Shall I be honest with you?
You can be honest on one of my videos.
Don't even know who Focus are.
And this is the world of progressive rock. He doesn't know Focus.
I'm not a progressive rock star.
Surely you know.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, this guy knows that he is a progger. I promise you, he's a proper progger. But we don't need to know everything, do we? But now I'm going to go over to the progmeister, Mr. Steve Gould, that's going to tell you all about Focus.
Rock and roll.
Hi folks, my name's Steve Gould. I've been asked by my dear friend Andy Edwards to put together a short overview of the Dutch band Focus as part of his top 30 prog bands of all time. Most of you will probably be familiar with this album, which was their second album, Moving Waves, which features the classic Hocus Pocus, which they still play live today, although it normally exceeds 20 minutes live. They also still play Eruption, which took up the whole of side 2. But if you haven't got any other Focus album, that is the one you should get. It is a classic. I have to be honest, it wasn't until Focus 3 that I got involved, and that was via the single Sylvia. But since then, Hamburger Concerto, which was their fourth album, with a different drummer, Englishman Colin Allen. Then you've got the live album Focus at the Rainbow. Then you got the odd anthology thrown in, which has got something like a best of. But when you consider the band are still going, and next month they release their 12th album, which is imaginatively titled Focus 12, what can I say? Tees Van Leer still leads the band. Pierre van der Linden is back in the drum seat. On bass, you've got Udo Panikiet. On guitar, you've got Menno Huches. Now, back in 2019, I put on a 3-day prog festival called Fusion Music Without Boundaries. It was actually our second festival. And even though we'd put a 1-day festival on the year before, which, due to me being a bit wet round the ears, didn't go particularly well. It went well organisation-wise, sound-wise, and we had nothing but good feedback. But attendance was very poor, and it was because I was totally unprepared. But I came back in 2019 with a 3-day event, and on the Friday I knew we had to have somebody very special to obviously bring people in that people were aware of. Now, I was very fortunate, if you look at it in that respect, that when my dad passed away, he left me some money. And so I was able to throw a lot of money at it to make an impact. And so we had Fusion in 2019, which was our second event, and Focus were the headliners on the Friday. And what an absolutely superb set they did. When you consider that Tees Van Leer is now well into his 70s, and he quite happily plays flute and organ at the same time, I hasten to add, he has totally and utterly got himself a wonderful set of musicians to accompany him on stage. Obviously, Pierre van der Linden back on drums, and like I say, Udo Panikiet on bass and Menno Huches on guitar. If you get a chance, check them out live. They do tour the UK quite regularly, And when you consider they went through a lengthy hiatus a while ago, I think it's very safe to say they are totally back and alive and kicking. Next month sees the release of their 12th album, which is imaginatively titled Focus 12. They have got a track available called Fjord Focus, which you can check out on YouTube. But what can I say? Focus. They definitely and utterly deserve a place in Andy's top 30 prog bands of all time.
Even after they pay me the money, I'm still going to melt every city on the planet with liquid hot magma, magma, magma.
Okay, Magma. That's another band that I like, that I love, actually. I'll make it short for you again. Some people don't like them because of their, language, Cubayan. But it's great. You have to give them an opportunity. Their best album is Live 1975. Here it is. Just amazing. I'm playing Christian Bonder, drums, virtuoso. Other people who play among others are Didier Lockwood, violin. He was 17 by this time. He's amazing. And then Bernard Paganotti on bass, power bass. You have to check them out. Do it. Now. Go get them. Bye.
Caravan, Canterbury, 1969 to 1981. That perfect combination of English pop whimsy and virtuoso rock performance, combining the influences of Donovan, Traffic, and Nick Drake, and Gong. Their masterpiece is The Land of Grey and Pink, released in 1971, which is an absolute classic. They are just absolute rock prog perfection, and certainly well worth diving into.
Costruisci qualcosa per il tuo stupido culo.
Legos.
Hello, this is Dudley Baker Barker. Tonight, the BBC4 presents Around the Town. Tonight's episode features Gladys and Reginald Hawksworth Spencer and the story of their walk. Sit back and enjoy the episode.
Well, one day, the missus and me, we were out for a bit of a walk, and everything was going quite nicely. Until all of a sudden we stopped, because suddenly we were getting rained on by the noggins of women. I don't believe they were noggins, they were mainly faces, just faces, no noggins. Oh, I stand corrected. So we were getting pelted by noggins of women, and we said, "Hello, noggins," and we carried on our way. We had to be off to get home to watch The Crown on the telly that night, and that's the story of our walk.
Hey, very well come into Grace Brothers for a little informal shopping.
Oh, the Queen in our store.
Well, of course, we have had a queen here before.
Mr. Humphreys, are you free? I'm very free, Mr. Gray. What are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? Yes, what are we going to do now?
Hello, Colin. Just sending you a message to see if there's anything that you can do about Andy. Not on what he's been doing lately. We've been having a good laugh in the WhatsApp group, and he's just butted in, you know, with his face all ill and coughing, making you feel sorry for him and saying he needs everybody to do all these videos for him. Well, you know, I'm thinking we already give him the £5, and now he wants us to make the videos. You know, we already give him the £5. So, not on what he's doing really. And then he did the same thing the day after, coming in saying, oh, I've still not got enough videos, now I've got COVID. So it just puts a real downer on our little party really. So I was wondering if there's just some sort of way just to make him have to knock, you know, before he comes in, and does things like that, because he's asking, he's pestering decent people now, isn't he? Because we said no, but he's just asking anybody to do his videos for him, you know, and we've already given him the £5. So I was just wondering if you could have a word with him, get him to sort it out, get him to stop messing about with AI, stop pestering us, just start doing his own videos again. Cheers, Colin. All the best.
This is my shrine to the Beatles. I love the Beatles, and every morning I get up and I come over and I say, good morning, Beatles, how are you? And they wave back at me, or well, their little silver cat waves back at me. But even though I love them so much and I say hello to them every morning and I say good night to them every night, I still wouldn't have them on a video which is the 30 best progressive rock bands in history. You know why? Because they're not prog. Now, they're more prog than free, but they're not prog. Now, I think the best thing, because you patrons might be getting a little bit hoity-toity, a bit above your station, right? I know, I've noticed a few things, right? But I think what we'll do is we'll forget all about this. We'll forget about free being on the list. And shall we just move on? We'll move on to the next one, shall we? Okay, lovely. And we're all still friends, aren't we? Lovely. Brilliant. Right, so what's next? Henry Cow. Henry Cow.
Hello, fellow Prog fans, and today I'm going to be giving a little short talk about Henry Cow. Henry Cow start with their debut album in 1973.
He's a real person,
as a collective,
not made up. He is real and he exists. He's an actual person in a band called Henry Cow.
I'm going into details on all these fantastic musicians and just tell you to look into their solo careers, look into their solo projects, because they went on to do all kinds of fantastic stuff after Henry Cow. But to begin, we have the Henry Cow legend, also known as Leg End, as a reference to the sock, which is kind of their icon.
was a very successful captain of industry. Henry Ford was a very successful captain of industry. Henry Ford was a very successful captain of industry. Henry Ford was a very successful captain of industry. Henry Ford was a very successful captain of industry. Henry Ford was a very successful captain of industry.
Navarak. Navarak.
Baby, let the groove flow. Listen to that beat they're saying.
Caravan. Caravan. Caravan.
Get up.
Caravan. Caravan. Caravan.
Burning strings with no end. Coltrane soul. Jazz that's infinity. Blazing brass Zappa's twist mind on that journey.
Henry Cow. Henry Cow.
This is solid Canterbury prog with a little bit of something extra added in, and that something extra will become more apparent in their next album, Unrest, which is a reference to their slogan, Unrest is Progress. And Henry Cow were hardcore Marxists. They did believe in the politics of Marxism. They took it very seriously. They would have debates about it at their band sessions, and they definitely connected what they saw as their progressive politics with their progressive music. They wanted music that was instrumentally as well as ideologically challenging, and that's what you get with this album, Unrest. It's very much a free improv experiment in many cases, and it's a move away from the traditional Canterbury sound that you hear in Leg End. But it's not my favorite by them, but it is definitely an interesting album. But they get more interesting. After this album, they team up with another band called Slap Happy, who I also highly recommend, very much an example of progressive pop music. They make the album Desperate Straight, which is a collaboration between the two projects that very much tries to kind of take the arty, weird, quirky pop of Slap Happy with the more avant-garde jazz and classical aspects of Henry Cow. And it's an interesting album, a lot of great stuff. But they go even higher on their next album with Slap Happy, In Praise of Learning, which in my opinion is a classic of progressive rock, especially the first side, which is two compositions. One, War, is 2.5 minutes long, featuring Slap Happy's vocalist Dagmar Krause, with an incredible performance. She's very much in the vein of kind of Brecht and Vale, cabaret, kind of like Lot Lenya, but she has a very, very distinctive and powerful voice. And then after that, she leads a 17-minute long epic, Living in the Heart of the Beast, which is very much a pure, unleaded expression of their Marxist politics. And you gotta listen to it. Listen along with the lyrics. It's an incredible composition that tells the story of people coming into class consciousness and rebelling against the capitalist system. And at this point, Henry Cow are kind of inventing their own genre called rock in opposition. Rock in opposition refers to opposition not merely to the mainstream record industry, but also just kind of mainstream rock music idioms. The desire to really branch out, to stop caring so much about any kind of traditional structure or commercial success, and just explore as much different type of music as you can. And obviously, Henry Cow didn't become as commercially successful as other progressive rock bands would become. Their music was difficult, it was challenging, and in many ways they were a band that was hostile to the very idea of commercial success. They had a lot of debates about whether to join up with Virgin Records, for example. And if you find the story of Henry Cow interesting, I can't do enough but recommend checking this book out, The World is a Problem. It's even if you're just interested in the kind of underground progressive rock culture of the 1970s, I think there's a lot that you will find of interest in here. But this really goes into what Henry Cow was all about, what their politics were about, how it merged with the music, and the kind of personalities are involved. And yeah, very interesting stuff. After In Praise of Learning, they have another album, which is Western Civilization. I think it's a very good album, but it's their last album. There's no Dogmar singing on that one. But they will go on to form a band called the Art Bears, which is not the complete lineup of Henry Cow, but Dogmar's there, Fred Frith is there, and they go on to, you know, actually kind of intermingle with the post-punk scene as well, which is interesting. But yeah, so that's Henry Cow. Please check them out if you haven't. If you have heard them but found them too challenging, maybe spend a bit more time on it and really kind of force yourself to understand the music, because it's very rewarding stuff. Thank you.
Henry Cow!
Space rock pioneers. What's not to love about them? There's never been a band like them. A lot of imitators over the years. A lot of people play this thing we call space rock. A lot of people borrow from Hawkwind, and they borrow from Tangerine Dream and Pink Floyd. But did anybody truly ever grasp and capture the sheer lunacy of all that is Hawkwind? Still going today. Dave Brock and company still going today. But back then, Dave Brock and Nick Turner and company just released some great albums. They had that first album, you know, which is pretty cool too. But man, In Search of Space is really where it all begins. You know, they pick up a guy named Lemmy Kilmister. Along the way, future leader, bass player, vocalist of Motorhead, he brings like this raw punkish intensity to the band. You got Nick Turner's squonking sax and great flute, big riffs from Dave Brock. You got Tone Generator and early synthesizers and organ and the rhythms and everything, crazy stuff. So spacey, punky, proto-metal, jazzy, all colliding. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, another great album from them. You know, one of my absolute favorites, The Hall of the Mountain Grill. You know, let's throw some Mellotron into the equation with some of these albums. Warrior on the Edge of Time, so spooky, so haunted, so spacey. Excellent stuff. Later on, you know, let's go into the 80s with Levitation. We got Ginger Baker on drums, for crying out loud. And then how about, you know, in the 80s, right? The Chronicles of the Black Sword. All of a sudden, they're embracing like that new wave of British heavy metal a little bit, making their music even more metallic and hard charging, but still spaciest stuff you'll ever want to hear. And then, you know, of course, you got to talk about their classic live album, Space Ritual. This is just absolutely mandatory if you want to know what Hawkwind is all about. I'd probably say if you want to start your Hawkwind journey with one record, you might as well check out Space Ritual, because it gives you some of the coolest songs from their early albums. And then live, it just all comes to life. And it's just this oozing miasma of spacey deliciousness that has never been replicated by anybody else. And arguably the classic lineup of the band. That'll always be the classic lineup of the band. So yeah, don't miss out on Hawkwind. If you've never discovered space rock at all, never taken a journey, that first step onto your space rock exploration needs to be with Hawkwind, and do it right here, folks.
Hello, and as they say around here, welcome to this video, apparently. Yeah, Andy has asked me to put together a short video for the Patreons, which includes me, so it's for me as well, hurrah. All about my love and appreciation for this album, In Through the Outdoor by Led Zeppelin. It's my favourite Led Zeppelin album of all time. I really do like it. I play it a lot. I think it's their greatest work. Oh, hang on. He wanted me to do a video about my appreciation for the band Camel, not Led Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor. I'll put that down. I'll start again. Yeah, Camel. I'm not actually a Camel expert, although I do like them very much.
Camel. What can we say about Camel? I love Camel. They're a great band. They're not your typical prog band. You know, they didn't start in 69, 70 and peaked in 72, 3 with fantastic albums like, you know, like the top prog bands did. They started out a little later. You know, those 3 years delay was enough in order to get them off the top 5, I think, for most prog freaks or prog heads. And they do appear in most of top 10 or top 20 lists because they are a great prog band. The only problem is that they peaked in 75 or 76 when prog was already declining, and they do have a run of great albums. I'm talking 74 Mirage, 75 Snow Goose, 76 Moon Madness. Terrific albums, very melodic, incredible rhythm section, very tight. Peter Barden's on keyboard and Andrew Latimer on guitar. They do they have a fantastic sound, very reminiscent of the symphonic or melodic prog, you know, like Renaissance or Genesis, but very light, or at least lighter. You can call it fluff, but they're good. They're very good. Before 74, I think not much worth it, and after 74 I would listen to Nude from 1981, which is a concept album, and this is not very typical. Not a lot of prog bands made it to the 80s with a good epic or a good concept album, so I'd give it to them just for that also. So check them out, Camel. Great band, great sound, very good production. Not heavy like we like it, but definitely up there with the greats. Check them out.
What about the big Birmingham bands, like obviously you got the Moon, and ELO, and all
but
those guys, and then Zeppelin, you know,
all before. This is all before. I mean, for all that, you know. I remember we used to see Robert Plant and his band Listen at the time. We used to, you know, do lots of gigs with them, and we were playing the Queen Mary Ballroom in Dudley Zoo, and Robert Plant was there with his wife. You know, we hadn't seen him for ages, and we sort of go, "Oh, Robert, what are you up to?" He said, "Well, Jimmy Page has asked me to join this band." You know, it was the Yardbirds there.
Yeah, the Yardbirds.
Because that was the Yardbirds are quite an underground name in the States. He said, "They've asked me to join the Yardbirds." He says, "I don't particularly like the material." He said, "But it means I can go to America." and the rest is history.
He said he didn't like it. We got it on video as well.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I'll get the mafia after me.
You probably don't know this. I drummed for Robert Plant for 2-3 years.
With what band?
It was a band called the Priory of Brian, and he put it back together.
I never heard of that one.
It was the late 2000s. He put a band back together to explore all the stuff that he was into pre-Zeppelin, right? And you filled in a piece of knowledge for me, because one of the things we did is we went back to Dudley Zoo and we did a gig in the Queen Mary Ballroom in 2000.
I was talking, every time I come back to my home area, I always think, I would drive round, I used to play there. And I often wondered if Queen Mary Ballroom's still there.
Well, it wasn't a venue, it was literally just the tea room.
Well, it was the restaurant,
we took a big, and the thing about this, I don't know whether I've told this on it's your interview, I've got to tell you a story, because it's one of my best stories.
Yeah.
We did a sound check. It had gone dark, and me and my mate, the keyboard player, said, let's climb in the zoo and have a walk around. So we get in there, we're walking around, all the noises, all pitch black. And I go head first into one of the animal, this big pond, like the pig penguins. I go head first, straight over my head. And we literally got about 15 minutes to her on stage at Queen Mary Ballroom with Robert Plant. So I come trudging back in, and I can remember walking, I walked up, and Robert had a, oh bless him, do you remember Dave Hodgetts?
Yeah.
Dave was sat outside the venue.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, treasured up completely drenched, with about 10 minutes goes on, he looks at me, he goes,
Well, I remember talking about Zeppelin, and then I thought the only drummer they could have had was obviously Bonham.
Yeah.
You know, and...
so did you know John?
Yeah, and I remember we used to play, there's the Hen and Chickens on the Birmingham New Road.
Oh, I know the venue,
we played there, and Bonham was on, he was with a band called Danny King of the Mayfair set then. Anyway, sort of on one American tour, the Slade were on, it was about 74, I think, 74, 75. It was a gig arena in Dallas, and we're having a really good night. We all saw these apples, oranges, bananas being thrown on stage. I thought, what's all that about? You know. So anyway, we finished the gig and walked off stage. Who walked in behind us? Robert Plant and John Bonham. They bought fruit to throw at us while we were on stage. Like that. We've just been having a great laugh about the early days, you know, all that kind of thing. But, and I find a lot of that rapport has gone now. I mean, I might be wrong, but the impression I get, all that rapport you got. We always used to meet at the Caravan at New Street Station. After gigs, you know, sort of all the bands would be there with the hot dogs and teas and things like that. And I don't think that's around anymore. And it was a wonderful time there.
So at the moment I'm about 10 minutes outside of my town, right, and I'm approaching a village called Rushek. I think we're about a mile or so away. We're in the middle of the countryside, driving down a very narrow country lane. So in a few minutes we'll be there, and we'll see what we discover. Hello, so we've arrived at the village of Rushek. We have this beautiful, what looks like a Norman church behind me. Come and take a walk. We are right in the heart of the English countryside, so take a walk this way. So we're just coming round. Actually, I think we'll have to go in here, won't we? I'm going the wrong way, so let's follow me in. Often I talk on my channel about the English aesthetic. This is where we find the English aesthetic. Part of it resides in this sort of countryside. We're in a tiny little village. Just come around to the graveyard here. If you just come over here, we'll see there's a few film around the grave. Just film around to get this sense of the place, sense of the tiny little graveyard. And over here we have here the grave of John Henry Bonham, drummer with Led Zeppelin. And you can see people have brought all sorts of memorabilia. There's some incredible symbols actually here, some Zildjian symbols, there's drumsticks, there's all sorts of stuff. This is visited by so many people from so many different parts of the world, right? You can see across the top here all the cars, the drumsticks. It says cherish memories of a loving husband and father, John Henry Bonham, who died September 25th, 1980, aged 32 years. He will always be remembered in our hearts. Good night, my love. I think it's really hard to read it. What's really interesting coming here now and seeing this, I've been here a few times. What's really interesting is just seeing the passage of time that's happened since John Bonham died. The text on the gravestone is actually wearing away. When you look at the other gravestones in the area, they're much clearer. I don't know whether that's because people are touching the stone or not. But this is basically the area of the country where rock was born, and it's where, you know, John Bonham now sits at rest. It's a very moving thing. What really strikes me, as I said, is the amount of time that has passed since John Bonham died. We're talking now 42 years. I mean, it's more time passed than he actually lived.
Let's talk about why I think Led Zeppelin is one of the greatest prog bands. Well, undoubtedly they're one of the greatest bands, but are they really prog? Well, let's start looking at their compositions. Right away we can see, starting on 3 with Friends, this is a pretty unusual song. Maybe it's got some interesting influences. It's not structured like other songs. So maybe it's getting into the beginnings of their prog side. I mean, they're really a blues rock band at the core, but they really start to explore other styles, and I think prog is certainly one of them. But then 4, there are a number of tunes that sort of delve away from blues rock. Are we forgetting Stairway to Heaven? It's a longer song. It's not structured like a normal song, verse, chorus. It integrates different instrumentation, has different sections. It's really emerging as a epic song that can almost be an epic prog song. But then we have some works on houses between The Song Remains the Same and the Rain Song, and No Quarter. Can No Quarter not be considered a prog epic? And then to Physical Graffiti, what do we have? Kashmir, In the Light. 10 Years Gone does not use a keyboard, but if you look at the structure, the chords that Page used on the guitar of all these major sevenths, it really seems like if you reorchestrate it would be a prog epic. Then we have Achilles' Last Stand. It's got no keyboards, but so many overdubbed guitar tracks. Jimmy really used the guitar to craft this epic with so many sections and parts. So let's move on to one more, In Through the Outdoors. So prog is in decline, but John Paul Jones is at the range and putting together this epic. Lots of use of the synthesizer in the studios in Stockholm. Maybe it's not your favorite, but I really enjoy it. It's like sort of Led Zeppelin's last grasp at being exploring their prog aspects. So in sort you have these great epic tunes, and that makes them a bit of a prog band, if not in totality, as such a important aspect of their being. So thanks for listening.
Who came and shocked the world into submission with sheer intent and volume and emotion, and in terms of what they expressed, which was pretty much, of course, integrating the jazz. If you look at the fact they were trading chorus and stuff, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that derived from the old Dixieland band, where they're all trading choruses and stuff. So it's such a large sort of improvisational scope for the musicians in way of the writing. It wasn't overwritten, but it was enough to be insanely intriguing, and it was coming from so many different influences and areas by way of what all those musicians had become versed with and what they were all involved with in the front line in pushing forward at that point. And I think this is probably only some of what that made that band so great. You had the time and place element of the way recording sounded in those days. Funny enough, maybe the Mounting Flame was sort of a harder lesson on me than things. The perfect realization was evident on Birds of Fire, second studio album. And I loved all the periods of the band, particularly very, very early, and particularly later on into sort of later 1973, when they really started coming together big time. With the impossible heights they were achieving musically with one another. So really, more than formidable, it was earth-shatteringly fantastic and exhilarating. And amazingly eventful for many of us musicians coming up at that time, like me included, who happened to think that Mahavishnu was just like commonplace electric music of the time. I couldn't have been further wrong. We were witnessing something extremely amazing at that point. Even though I was too young to see them live, through all the many bootlegs and the forever impacting albums, this was just music from another universe and galaxy. So very happy to talk about Mahavishnu with you, and have a great online show.
One day I was in Pasadena in a record shop, and on came the Amon Flame album. And I was saying to you that Billy Cobham's work was so incredible because, yeah, chops, yeah, all that, but he was dirt funky, man. His hi-hat work on that jam, Vital Transformation, is incredible. How mean and street and the hip new generation coming into the jazz. That's what caught me. Vishnu's great guitar work, all that, yes, but the drumming. And then when I found out it was Cobham, I remember I had heard Cobham a little bit, was the band called Dreams with Will Lee and all them cats. And then I realized again how clean he is, how beautiful. You know, a lot of drummers are great, but they may not be as clean. Cobham was so clean.
It's something we just did. Nothing can be foreseen. With John playing with him, he invited me to give him a hand with some material that he had some ideas. I mean, when you see with a little spiral back notebook that he had, which was it was like a little tiny black book like this, but it was yellow. And I remember this so well because I said, what is in that? You know, I thought, oh, he had some music and he wanted me to play. Huh. He says, okay, what do you think about this? And he started playing. He said, what could we put? What could you put behind this line? And so we started playing. He didn't even count off. He just boom, and it just sort of started to fall. He said, okay, now where we go from here? And once these little modules started to connect, we had a groove that cut right straight through. And so he'd go back and he'd remember.
Well, it's I'll try to condense it, but basically, as a 10-year-old in 73, we had Birds of Fire on 8-track tape.
You lucky thing.
But I was lucky because my Uncle Dave was sort of an older brother figure to me, and he was living that stuff in his college years. So he turned me on to Genesis, he turned me on to Mahavishnu, Return to Forever, Where Have I Known You Before? I remember that hit hard. So I was aware of prog and jazz rock simultaneously. And I noticed that guys like Chick and John were classical minded players, that they had they knew Ravel and they knew Stravinsky, and they named their album Birds of Fire, and they would do these references to Miles Davis, Miles Beyond, or Love Supreme on Love, Devotion, Surrender, and all of a sudden I'm being exposed to jazz when I didn't realize it.
It was just ripping.
It was somewhere in when I was in, maybe a year or so after that, I was listening to the Mahavishnu Orchestra's record Birds of Fire, which is an incredible record. And for some reason, in the middle of that record, I said, oh, now I see why they hated women. Okay, all right. Oh, okay, I got you.
Frank Zappa never let you be secure in what little you know. That is the reason he's the greatest one of the greatest artists of all times. Because if you were buying Zappa records when he was alive, each time it was a shock. He never gave you what you wanted. You decided that he got into, like with the Grand Wazoo, into far out, complex, written, notated third stream jazz, and then the next thing he does is a garish, vulgar, sexual funk record, overnight sensation, and then you get into that music, and then it changes and he does something else, and each time he's almost slapping you in the face and saying, don't be secure in this little bubble of music you found you liked. Actually, there's other music you could like. And for me, that is he's against personal chauvinism. He's against the wars of identity. I'm this and I don't like that. He's saying, look on the other side of the fence, what might be there. Now, to do that, you've got to be very selective. It's not a matter of loving everything on the other side of the fence. It's a matter of finding what you really like. And he's very specific about his likes, and he used to sprinkle his interviews with names that you'd never heard of, and you go out and check them and find they were brilliant. I mean, Zappa educated me in music. So I think he established that improvisation and making music with your friends is the wellspring of music. And I was interested in Burn Power in his the YouTube with Andy, how he talked about how throughout the 18th and 19th century there was informal music making by all the different peoples of America, and they're all like copying each other, mimicking each other, maybe making fun of each other, but they're all learning from each other, and that's what creates blues and jazz, which is the basis of rock music. Andy got excited that John Bonham from Led Zeppelin was so impressed with Elvin Jones, the great drummer for Coltrane, when he saw him in Soho, that he didn't even dare go and talk to him. And if you read interviews with all the great rock bands, they're all going back to the blues. That's what inspired rock. But Byrne is very generous. He doesn't do that American thing of going, yeah, you Brits all ripped us off. He talks about how it's different. There's an English, he doesn't talk about the feel. That's another observation that someone's made, that it's kind of sped up, the blues boom stuff, and punk distilled that. It's kind of brittle and faster than American music. But he points out that having ambitious music, having long guitar solos, was something that blues players didn't really do, and was certainly not on record. And Duke Ellington wrote suites towards the end of his life, but he was aiming at like 3-minute songs, 4-minute songs, 5-minute songs that could get on the radio. So that expansion of what music could be, he credits to the Brits. Now, I'm not entirely against British prog. I absolutely adore a band called Egg, E-G-G. I think they're extraordinary. But I'm sort of partial to a bit of Canterbury rock, although it gets a bit kind of fairy music for me. But it's a discussion that everyone has to keep going, and that's what I like about Andy's YouTube. Is the idea is that we keep talking to each other without getting offended and angry with each other. I have a band called AMM All Stars. Graham Davis is a huge prog fanatic. He can't deal with old blues and old jazz. He just says it's tedious, and we have many rows and many productive hours of music making. And so this idea that musicians actually getting together and playing music brings in all sorts of different influences, and it's where new music is created, I think is absolutely correct, and connects for me for my passion for Derek Bailey, who argued for free improvisation. Some people think he was creating an unpleasant art music you can't dance to. I think he was sticking up for the Kurt Zach's idea of the wellsprings of music being music making, not buying commodities, not buying records. Buying records, it's a start. You start to sort of, when you collect records, you start to want to know the history of music, and that gets really interesting. But the idea that, when you say to someone, are you into music? No, I haven't bought anything lately. I mean, capitalism has made us think that music is going to a shop and buying something, but it's not. Music is playing an instrument. So I think I'll finish there. Andy wanted me to keep it short. So yes, I vote for Frank Zappa as the greatest prog artist of all time, along with James Joyce, probably the greatest artist of the 20th century, in my opinion. And it's his ability to ride contradictions and his refusal to be trapped in a class niche which makes him so inspiring. Thanks, Andy, for the window. Bye.
We are at the halfway mark now. We've got to 15 out of 30. This is a long video, isn't it? I do apologise for how long it is, but this is like the Citizen Kane of ranking videos on YouTube. I'm really going for the most epic ranking video that's ever been made. And at number 15, the next band we have is a newer band, but has become one of the great progressive rock bands of the modern era. At number 15, we have Porcupine Tree, a band that I absolutely love, also obviously a favourite of my patrons. And I feel very proud that I've actually got a member of the band to talk to you about Porcupine Tree. So I'm now going to hand over to the great Colin Edwin, the bass player with the band, to have a little bit of a chat about Porcupine Tree.
Hi folks, it's Colin Edwin here. I've just recording a quick message, keeping it real. Andy Edwards has been in touch to tell me that Porcupine Tree made number 15, I think it was, best all-time prog band list for his followers, his Patreons. And I'm not quite sure what to do with that information. It's good to know people are really interested in the band and the things that have happened, and the music's still kind of living on, which is great. I just want to say a couple of things that maybe might explain my amusement at that. Is that we spent a long time trying to get away from the progressive tag, obviously without any kind of success. But we turned down a lot of progressive rock festivals, when they were billed as prog festivals, because we didn't want to be associated with the genre. We wanted to kind of move on and reach people outside of the niche. So I can remember also doing an interview for some quite big magazine. I think it might have been Mojo, which is really hard to get press in a magazine like Mojo, especially at the time. And basically the journalist phoned me up, and I spent about half an hour persuading him that we shouldn't be part of the article he was writing about the sort of neo-progressive rock bands, and obviously did a good job, because we didn't get mentioned. So that's kind of ridiculous and amusing now, and of course everyone knows, a leopard doesn't change its spots, and there is certainly progressive influences going on in the music there. So Anyway, I hope you find that little anecdote kind of amusing, and all the best to Andy and his patrons.
Well, what can I say about Cardiacs? Probably my all-time favourite band, I guess. I first saw them playing Tarred and Feathered on a programme called The Tube. I think it was in 87 maybe? I don't remember. At first I was like, hey, what is this? But I remember recording it on the VHS video cassettes as they were back in the day, and then playing it over and over, and it just clicked with me. Something about them was really unique, special. The sort of crazy, fast punk prog mixed with nursery rhymes, almost, I don't know, it's almost like a secret recording of some of my childhood memories. It seemed that Tim had tapped into that in a way. I think that's the same for everybody. There's something nostalgic about them and special. I was lucky to get to know Tim reasonably well, and Jim and a few of the other guys, as we shared the same manager for a while. And in the late 80s, early 90s, I would go and see Cardiacs, and after the show, at various drunken stages, Tim and I would talk feverishly about each other's music. He had admiration, or a respect rather, for Napalm as well. I think it kind of confused him, what we did, as much as perhaps what the Cardiacs did confuse me in really creative ways. We just both admired each other's music, and we always talked about doing a project together, but of course that sadly never happened, which would have been wonderful. And then, due to Napalm Death's touring schedule, we were always so busy, but sometimes, be it with Napalm Death or other projects, you'd be driving in the desert for hours and hours, and something about Cardiacs, I would always play them in certain tracks, especially The Taste of Honey and stuff like that. Just used to put me in such a place. I was so far away from home, made me feel at home. And I would always send Tim a text to say, hey, it's been a while since we've seen each other, and thinking of you. And again, your songs warm my heart. And he would always write back, take us on tour. Well, it would be lovely to do that one day. Sadly, Tim's not here. It's a shame. But marvellous band, really, for me. They just put me in a good space. The day's not a good day unless you play Cardiacs, I think, personally.
Faust arrived in my ears aged about 12, and they were the benchmark that I've used for everything I've heard since. Their imagination and ingenuity just surprised me then, and still does. And I was privileged enough just last year to spend a week with Jean Hervé of Faust in a workshop in France, and his passion and love of music remains undimmed. What can you say? Faust. You know Faust. It's us.
Agent K9 was with the biologic police assigned to bring the dwarf plague under control by disconnecting the dwarves from Central Control Station.
Okay, so, favorite band? I'll make it short for you. Soft Machine.
K9 left the cafe and surveying the street scene, he could not but feel that someone had goofed. The death dwarves had in many cases been separated from the human host, but they were still charged from central control and yacked through the streets, imitating words and gestures of everyone in sight.
They have different periods, from like early psychedelic pop to then jazz fusion. My favorite period is around, I don't have the vinyl, but the CD third. It's a great period. Robert Wyatt on drums, Hugh Cropper on bass, Mike Ratledge on keyboards. And then you have a very good horn section with Elton Dean, Lynn Dobson, Mark Charig on cornet, and Nick Evans on trumpet. Actually, their best record is live. It's not even this. This is studio, but then their best albums are live, the BBC Live, or one called Rita Reactor. I don't have it here. But then this, get this. This song is called Eamon Andrews. That's for you, Andy. Go get it now. Do yourself a favor. Bye.
Right, so I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head for home. I'm going to now turn the car around, head for home. Oh my God, my camera's fallen over. I mean, I've just got, there we go. You there still? You see, I've tried my best with this video. I've tried my best to do something really good. And yeah, things keep going wrong. Those of you at Eagle Eye will notice my shirt's changed. And when I went to visit John Bonham's grave, I actually went back in time. No expense has been spared with this video. Costume change. I'm like Dave Lee Roth. I've changed my costume halfway through the video. It's pretty impressive. Anyway, I'm headed back for home. I feel that I want to finish the rest of this video back in my lovely studio. So the next time you see me, I will be back at Grumpy's shed to tell you about some of the bands, because I thought it's not right, I mean, the patrons are moaning about it, the fact that I'm actually doing no work. They think I'm doing no work. They don't got a clue. I've been driving around all over the place and doing all sorts of things, trying to persuade people to talk about certain bands. My camera's going to fall over if I'm not careful. I've got a special stand for the car and it's broken. See how it was wobbling? Too much centrifugal force. Anyway, next time you see me, we'll be back in the studio and I will be doing a talk on some of the bands so that you do get at least a little bit of Edward's wisdom on this video. You ready to fall over again? See? That's the way it is. See you in a bit.
So Gentle Giant, truly an enigma of progressive rock. One of those bands that maybe the first time you discovered Gentle Giant, you're not quite sure what you heard. Right? What is it? That doesn't sound like Yes. That doesn't sound like Genesis or Pink Floyd or Emerson, Lake and Palmer or anybody else. Well, maybe there's a little bit of that kind of madrigalness and of Jethro Tull, right? There's something very quirky and English about Gentle Giant, but ultimately there's nobody like Gentle Giant. And for me, they have a series of albums that may be unmatched when you're talking about classic prog bands where, back to back to back to back albums just absolutely knock it out of the park. I mean, the debut is very fine for what it is. Again, kind of bluesy, quirky, very British sounding. It's rocking in spots. It's kind of folky in others. There's elements of classical and Baroque and all sorts of things going on there. But it wasn't until they came out with Acquiring the Taste that all of a sudden you start to realize, man, this band is onto something. They're doing something completely different. I don't really know quite if I like it yet or not, right? And then concept album Three Friends. for me, arguably their best album. Amazing. You know, get 3 guys in the band. Everybody takes part in singing. There's recorders going on. There's violin. There's heavy guitars. There's amazing bass. There's Moog synths and Mellotron and Hammond organ and all sorts of different keyboards, saxophone. Maybe the singers, if you look at all of them individually, maybe none of them are classic singers in the true sense of the word, but together they all work magic. Of course, it continues on. Roger Dean joins forces with the band for Octopus. Amazing, complicated arrangements, the use of counterpoint, just absolutely stunning. In a Glass House, I bet you thought they would never top that, but you know what? The Power and the Glory. Killer album. Freehand, let's make our music slightly more accessible to anybody, but it's still the most complex music you'll hear anywhere. Freehand, the album I tell everybody to start their journey with Gentle Giant on, because it's just, every song is so memorable, even though it's like light years ahead of what most people are doing. Arguably their last great album, Interview, also really great. You got The Missing Piece, fine album. Doesn't all work great. Obviously, the band's getting more commercial, but still some great tracks on here. Their next album, Giant for a Day, is probably the one stinker in their catalog. Then they try to enter the 80s with Civilian and make their sound a little bit more modern. Didn't quite work. They broke up. Along the way, too, you've got the live album, Playing the Fool, which is amazing how they cover all this stuff so great in concert and just wow you with their amazing virtuosity. A great band. Again, so hard to describe. Nobody sounds like them. Sure, it's progressive rock, but man, all these different elements coming together. Absolutely killer band. Do not miss out on them. But it might take you a few listens before you really get to understand what they're all about.
Hi guys, my name's Steve Gould. I've been asked by my dear friend Andy Edwards to put together a short overview of the legendary German electronic band Tangerine Dream for his 30 best prog bands of all time feature. They use a lot of these things, you know, synths. I've actually got 4 of these, but I thought I'd bring this one out because it's nice and small and fits on the screen nicely. But I've been obsessed with synths since the 70s. So when Phaedra was released back in the day, it totally and utterly struck a chord with me. It was the one album I think most people took on board. And obviously it was heralded by the legendary John Peel. Since then, they've gone on to produce so many albums you would not believe. They've got an immense back catalogue. But for me, the classic lineup of Edgar Froese, Chris Frank, Peter Bowman was the best years of that particular band. So a good place to start might be these 2 box sets, okay? The first one's called In Search of Hades. It's got a remixed version of Phaedra by none other than Stephen Wilson. It's got Rubicon, Stratosphere, Ricochet, Cyclone, all the classic Virgin albums. There you go. There's a list of all the stuff on the back. It's got some bonus tracks, stuff that's never been released, some live sets. Absolutely superb. My lady bought me that a couple of years ago. It took me 9 months before I opened it because I wanted to leave it in totally pristine condition. But a very good place to start if you've not checked out this absolutely awesome band. The second volume, which was also from the Virgin years, is called Riders of Purple Twilight. And again, an absolute mammoth amount of music on there, including Tangram, Thief, Exit, Soundtrack to the Soldier, The Keep, Hyperborea, Logos, absolutely superb. Both box sets come with an amazing book, and what can I say? If you've got a spare couple of £100, definitely worth investing in. Now obviously the original lineup are no longer together because Edgar passed away, unfortunately, a number of years ago, but the band are still going in a different format, and I have to say that this particular album, Quantum Gate, which was one of their more recent albums, is a total and utter return to form. What a band. They are nothing but legendary, and definitely and utterly deserve a place in Andy's top 30 prog bands of all time.
Well, what is Gong? Gong is as much a mythology as it is a band. It was started in the late 60s by David Allen and Ginny Smith. And from there on, it's been concerned as much with the ludicrous and absurd as it is with the spiritual and the metaphysical. It's gone through many, many changes, very different phases, but always upwards, always going upwards, always expanding and ascending. And 50 years on, Gong is going strong, making beautiful psychedelic music and turning on heads the world over.
and welcome back to the studio. Here we are about to run through the final 7 of not mine, but my patrons' 30 greatest progressive rock bands of all time. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. This has been a very long video. If you're still watching, I respect you for sitting through all of this, but we're nearly there now. So buckle up, we're on the final straight, the last 7. So, what have I got at number 7? Well, at number 7 is a progressive rock band that when I started this channel, I wasn't so keen on. And then studying the history of progressive rock and listening to stuff again, my respect for this band has gone up and up and up. And I now think they are truly one of the greatest progressive rock bands of all time. And that band is Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which was formed in 1970 out of the remnants of Keith Emerson's The Nice. We also had Greg Lake that had come from King Crimson. And then Carl Palmer, who had been playing with Atomic Rooster and The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. So this was a supergroup, a little bit like Cream, but a few years later. But instead of having a guitar hero up front, we had basically the Jimi Hendrix of the Hammond organ. And this guy had come out playing with the aggression of rock, but also with that understanding of virtuosity that comes from classical music. And he was able to put these two together. Now, when you say what prog is, you say, well, it's like rock music mixed with classical music. That's the sort of the sound that we would call, you know, progressive rock. And I think, in a way, Emerson, Lake and Palmer embody that more than any other band on this list. Now, I've still got a few guests to come, and I will be bringing them in on this final lap. And I'm very chuffed to have an incredible guest for ELP, which is a really good friend of mine. I've known him for about 30 years now, I would say, nearly 30 years. And this is a drummer called Steve Palmer. Now, Steve Palmer is from a dynasty of drummers quite local to me. His nephew is an incredible jazz drummer, well, incredible drummer all around, which is Ian Palmer. And you might have guessed that his other brother, Steve's other brother, is Carl Palmer. So I thought, because throughout this video, I wanted to get new viewpoints on these bands. I didn't want the same old stories to come out. I wanted people who love these bands, when they watch this, to go, oh, I didn't know that, or I've never heard from this person before, or that's a story I hadn't heard before. So Steve Palmer's a little bit younger than his brother Carl, right? When ELP formed, it was a very exciting time in the Palmer household, because suddenly his brother, who was only 20 years old at the time, was in this incredible band. They did a small gig somewhere, and then their second gig was playing the Isle of Wight Festival. Can you imagine this? You formed a band, and your second gig is the Isle of Wight Festival, which also featured Joni Mitchell, it featured Jimi Hendrix, it featured Miles Davis. The Miles Davis and Jimi Hendrix concerts have both been released as albums, and these are absolutely classic performances. So, you know, I got in contact with Steve Palmer and said, you know, would you like to do a chat? And he said, what would you want to talk about? I said, did you go to the Isle of Wight Festival with Carl? He went, I did. So what you're going to see now is a little talk from Steve, and he's going to be telling you about his experience going to watch his big brother in ELP performing at the Isle of Wight Festival. So take it away, Steve.
So Andy Edwards has asked me to do a brief talk about the Isle of Wight Festival when my brother's band, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, it was their second gig, but their first real big gig a long time ago. I think I was not quite 15 when I went. Actually, the backup story is we drove down in an old van, no seatbelt rules in those days. I think it was with Glenn Tipton, later to be in Judas Priest, but it was just local friends, guitarists, drove down to the Isle of Wight with just a sleeping bag. There were different days, festivals then. We all went primarily, actually, Hendrix, because we'd not seen Jimi Hendrix, so we wanted to see him. So we all jumped in an old van and drove down. I was just a member of the audience until 10 years after we were on, just before Emerson, Lake and Palmer next. And I convinced the security, yeah, I'm his brother, I want to go up on stage. And walk around the back, past Roger Daltrey and all that, The Who, getting ready for their set. And Carl was talking to the drummer from 10 years after and said, oh yeah, made it, great. For me, Carl was just 20. It was an amazing set. And I'm sort of just about bobbing up. My head is in the video of it, trying to get to see this new band, brand new band. So it's very exciting. I'd seen The Nice with Keith Emerson, and later on would go on to play with David O'List, the original guitarist from The Nice. But this was really exciting. Keith Emerson was the man, and Greg Lake from 21st Century Schizoid Man singing. It was like, wow, this is something special. And they had two giant cannons on the stage, which at the end of the set went off. And whoa, I think we all jumped out of our skin, particularly those of us so close on stage. I was getting in the way of a photographer who was trying to get the first good pictures of ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I'll actually attach my favourite photo of Carl that photographer who sort of kept muscling in took, and he took a great photos. Carl on his Gretsch, silver Gretsch drum kit, which he'd used in Atomic Rooster previously, with the metal Gretsch snare drum, which he passed on to me, which I later passed on to Ian Palmer, another drummer in the family. So the set was just, Carl was just so concentrated and on it, extremely confident at 20. I think Andy had said somewhere the first album came out fully formed. And that was my feeling too. I know John Peel said they were a waste of time, talent and electricity. But for me, no, there was something special, and it was different from The Nice. So anyway, I'm into 3 minutes. So this was just a brief recollection of a great gig and a great festival back in the day. So all the best to Andy and his viewers. Bye.
Isn't that fantastic? And after I watched that interview, I went back and looked at the footage of the Isle of Wight, and yes, there's a number of heads bobbing up in the background, and ELP are absolutely on fire. One of the things that's really interesting about ELP is just the way they came out, at full force. And I think their greatest album is perhaps the first album, just because their intention is so clear. So that's who we've got at number 7, right? So at number 6, we have another progressive rock band, which is not one of my choices. It's not a band that I'm much of a fan of. And I have no guest for this one. I did have a guest lined up, but they didn't feel they could do this band justice. I know exactly how they feel. So they've passed it back to me, who is probably a person that's going to do them even less justice. And this is Van der Graaf Generator. Van der Graaf Generator represents in progressive rock history a darkness that balances against the sometimes tweeness that we have with Yes and Jethro Tull, and even Pink Floyd and King Crimson from that period. There's a sort of English tweeness there. Now, Van der Graaf Generator are a lot closer in a way to the aesthetic we associate with European progressive rock bands. And it's very interesting that if they hadn't been such a huge hit in Italy, we may not be talking about this band. When they emerged in 1970, especially with their masterpiece album, Porn Hearts, they actually went number 1 in Italy, and they went over there to do a tour to be, very surprised that they were being mobbed. And I think that secured their legacy, really. Van der Graaf Generator are not the same sort of virtuosos that you would associate with an Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or a Yes, or a King Crimson. They're They're progressive rock because their aesthetic is so progressive and it's unrelenting. The real Marmite aspect of Van de Graaf Generator, and by Marmite, if you're not here in the UK, we have a thing called Marmite. In Australia, it's called Vegemite, and some people love it and some people hate it. I love Marmite. I really love Marmite, and I've actually eaten Marmite on toast on this channel. And nothing else. That's all I did, was just did a video of me eating Marmite. So I have represented Marmite already, and I've done my best to represent Van de Graaf Generator here. But they're not a band that I like that much, because I think when I was coming up as a youngster and I came into contact and heard them, I wasn't hearing the virtuosity element in that band that I associate with the other progressive rock. Now I'm older and I have grown to actually appreciate the aesthetic aspects of progressive rock more. And this is a really important thing that I think is an important aspect of progressive rock. A lot of people get into progressive rock when they're young. They're blown away by the sort of technical ability and the imagination and the intellectual concepts. But you don't so much appreciate the aesthetic. As I've got older, I realised that Van de Graaf Generator really represents something for progressive rock. They're almost like the most proggy band of all time. So going back to their Marmiteness, for me, the Marmiteness really comes from Peter Hammill. And Peter Hammill, in the same way that we could see Keith Emerson as being sort of the Jimi Hendrix of the Hammond organ, Peter Hammill is almost like the Jimi Hendrix of the voice. There is a bluesiness and range and control of the colour of his voice, which is coming from the blues and soul. There is a balladeerness that would come from people like Scott Walker, and an Englishness as well. Peter Hammill wants to expand his voice out, and he's probably the true virtuoso of the band. Van de Graaf Generator do not last long, and they're gone by the time we've just reached the peak of progressive rock, which is another reason why I don't think they are household names. And Peter Hammill then goes off into a solo career, which moves from progressive rock ideas to punk ideas to more experimental ideas. This band were always forging forward to the point where they break up and then they come back together. And this has happened over a number of years. I wish I could give more insight into this band. Like I say, you know, the interview I had planned hasn't come in here, so I've had to try and do this one myself. And I think I've done the best I can with Van de Graaf Generator. Of course, these choices are not mine. When I did my 10 greatest progressive rock albums, I put Van de Graaf Generator in, but that was a lot easier because I listened to Porn Hearts 2 or 3 times, and then I could talk about the album. Here, I'm trying to talk about the overall band, and they're just a strange band in my world, and this is where I can make this point in this video. Is that this video is so important because it's the summation of the community that I've been building here on YouTube. It's an incredible thing. And I think, I don't think anyone's ever really done anything like this before in terms of ranking videos or music discussion. And so, thank you, patrons, for voting that at number 6. And I'm now going to move on to number 5 because I think I've exhausted everything I could say about Van de Graaf Generator. And again, with number 5, I had somebody lined up and they couldn't quite get the video to me, so I am going to be representing this band myself, which is going to be a lot easier because I'm a huge fan of this band. At number 5, we have Jethro Tull. Now, Jethro Tull form very early on. A lot of progressive rock bands like Yes and Van de Graaf Generator, ELP, are all sort of either forming around about 1970 or they're getting their act together around about 1970 when the sort of progressive rock wave is really surging forward. Jethro Tull exist for a long... they're around earlier. They're contemporaries of Pink Floyd and they're nice and they're on the circuit and they're playing. And more than, I mean, Pink Floyd, we could argue the same with them, but in terms of where they're coming out of, they are coming out of the blues boom that's happened in the 1960s. Within that blues boom was a sort of adherence to rhythm and blues and hard bop. That's in there as well. You know, if we look at something like Cream, Eric Clapton's the blues guy, but Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce are the hard boppers, right? So they would be listed to people like Charlie Mingus, you know, and Art Blakey. There's that aspect to the blues boom. What's interesting with Jethro Tull, they first emerged, they're like a blues group that is also pulling from Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who was a jazz wind player. He played saxophones, he played the flute, and he also played all sorts of weird reed instruments. He was famous for overblowing when he played the flute, and we can see that Ian Anderson has taken his flute style directly from Rahsaan Roland Kirk. In putting that together with the guitarist Mick Abrahams, who was very close to sort of Clapton approach to blues, we get that first album, which has prog tendencies on there, and the prog tendencies come from the uniting of the English aesthetic with this blues sound. It's the same thing that we see happening with Led Zeppelin and Cream. You know, Cream had musical elements to some of their songs. As the band progresses, in the early days, Ian Anderson gains control of the band and it becomes less democratic. And he has a vision. And he has a vision of pursuing, I think, that English aesthetic. I mean, Jethro Tull are the only band on this list that are named after something that points directly to the English aesthetic. So I think Jethro Tull was some agriculturalist from way back in history. I can't tell you much more than that. And so suddenly on the albums Stand Up and Benefit, we see this move towards a very particular type of progressive rock. Now, for me, those albums, Stand Up and Benefit, they are at their peak. We also get Living in the Past, which is a collection of other stuff from around that time. They're having hit records, they're getting in the charts, and they start to move towards becoming a stadium band, much like Led Zeppelin. When they bring out Aqualung, Aqualung is almost like an accidental concept album. I'm not sure it even is a concept album, but the character of Ian Anderson, the character of the sort of homeless guy, unites that. And Jethro Tull get the perception of being a prog band, which I think surprises Jethro Tull. And Ian Anderson, who now has full control, he's brought in Martin Barr, who is a much more classical bass guitarist, I suppose. He goes, well, all right then, if we're going to do this, let's do this. And he parodies progressive rock. Now, I think a lot of the great progressive rock is a parody. I think there's elements in Emerson, Lake and Palmer that is a parody of progressive rock. Some bands like Yes and King Crimson take themselves very, very serious. A lot of the Canterbury bands don't. And so we have that in Jethro Tull. There's a humour there. And they bring out Thick as a Brick, which almost like goes, let's look at what these progressive guys, let's just take the mickey out of that. Let's just do a whole track. And we'll have a spoof newspaper and all this type of stuff. And Thick as a Brick launches them because it really is one of the greatest progressive rock albums ever made. And from that point on, they are a really strange band in that they are playing such obtuse, complex, deep music. There is a level of virtuosity which is only equaled, I think, by perhaps Gentle Giant, maybe Yes. The virtuosity level is incredible. With the addition of Barrymore Barlow, who's an absolute virtuoso drummer, probably the greatest progressive rock drummer at that period of time. They go through a number of absolutely classic albums. They are a stadium level band. They are huge in the United States. But the critics turn on Jethro Tull first. The critics seem to react against the complexity and intellectual musicality of that band. And that actually causes them to stumble a little bit. Around about 1976, when a lot of the progressive rock bands are pulling themselves in, they retain the complexity, but they go deeper into the English aesthetic with two of my favourite albums by them, which is Songs of the Wood and Heavy Horses. I love those, and I love the early ones. And I love Mitchell and the Gallery and all those brilliant albums. After that, Jethro Tull, and it's interesting because a lot of the sort of English aesthetic bands were able to actually negotiate the 1980s, but Jethro Tull were one of those bands that couldn't, and they floundered. They tried their best to, but I think if they'd have maybe taken a leaf out of bands like Talk Talk, XTC, they may have been able to do that a lot better. And I think maybe Ian Anderson at that point just had too much control of the band. But they're still going to this day. Ian Anderson's voice is shot, so he is not able to sing a lot of the songs that he could sing in the old days. But he's still making albums that people enjoy and are getting, reasonable critical acclaim. So they're still going after 55 years. So, a very high place for Jethro Tull and much deserved, I think, at number 5. Right. We're now on the last 4, and it's very interesting because nobody decided on this list. My patrons created this list with assisting. I've got some clever patrons. I was in a patron meeting last night with them, and we started to count the PhDs, and it was full of PhDs, and there's system analysts in there, and they've really gone to town. And what's interesting is they have come up in the final 4 places with what everyone would call the big 4. And it's an interesting order they're in. I agree with this order entirely. Okay? So at number 4, we have Pink Floyd. A band that exists on every single chapter, every single innovation in progressive rock. They are there first. In 1967, bringing out an album just after Sgt. Pepper. They explore with Syd Barrett all the quirkiness and Englishness. And then they go on to explore all the improvisation and weird electronic experimentation that we would associate with maybe a Soft Machine or even bands like Tangerine Dream. And they lay the groundworks for krautrock. They really do. They are without a frontman and without a main songwriter, and they have to learn how to write songs. And you can watch that process of them trying to find a focus, and that focus becomes Roger Waters. And by the time they record Dark Side of the Moon in 1973, they are on a run to make 3 or 4 of the greatest progressive rock albums of all time. Now, why I think they should be at number 4 when they're so important and probably the biggest selling band on this list is because there's many out there that would say they're not progressive rock. And by that, it means they don't conform to the other 3 bands we're about to have on this list. So you really have to accept that what Pink Floyd do is not, gutsy rock and roll like the Ramones, and it's not disco. You have to go and look at it and look at the elements. And I think there's enough elements for them to definitely be progressive rock. They lack a virtuosity level in the same way as Van der Graaf Generator. Now, I do have a guest to talk about this band, which I'm very pleased about. He's already done 2 chapters already, and I feel honoured to have this guy doing 3 of these, because I know a lot of people who love this channel probably love his channel even more. So it's great to have him on my side, giving his incredible wisdom, and he is now going to come in and give you some wisdom about Pink Floyd. And of course, it's the Don. It's the top guy in terms of what we do here, these ranking videos. This is the guy. I don't think there's a band he hasn't ranked. Right, so, ladies and gentlemen, here is Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility.
So a few words about Pink Floyd. What is Pink Floyd? Who are Pink Floyd? Pink Floyd are arguably one of the most popular and beloved bands of all time. Are they classic rock? Played all over classic rock radio here in the US for decades. You can't go an hour without hearing a Pink Floyd song on an FM rock radio channel, right? Are they progressive rock? Many people cite them as one of the big 4 or 5 of progressive rock, you know, alongside other giants like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, King Crimson, Genesis, Jethro Tull, certainly, right? Or are they just simply a psychedelic rock band? They're that too. You look at those early albums, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Saucer Full of Secrets, Obscured by Clouds, Metal, Uma Guma. Metal is arguably the album where Pink Floyd really, really develops the sound we would know and love. Then, of course, you got later efforts like The Wall and The Final Cut. The Wall looked at as one of the great concept albums of all time. The Final Cut, the last album of the classic lineup of the band. And then, of course, David Gilmour would lead the band going forward. Roger Waters would do his own thing, never to really come back together once again. But for me, it's the trio of albums, starting with The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and Animals, that truly exemplifies all that was great about that lineup of Pink Floyd. Again, this blending of spacey rock and psychedelia and pop and blues and art rock, right? Some of it's dark and depressing, some of it's soaring and uplifting. It's a little bit of everything. The great guitar soloing from Mr. Gilmour, the throbbing bass, the angry vocals from Roger, the more laid-back vocals from Dave, the wonderful use of keyboards, synthesizers, organ, electric piano from Richard Wright, and of course the great drumming from Nick Mason. All these elements make Pink Floyd such a great band. And to me, it's these albums that really give you the greatness, the true greatness of Pink Floyd, the masterful use of the studio and all the wizardry and effects that you can do inside a recording studio. It's got all of it's here, orchestrations and little sound effects and sizzling guitar soloing. And yeah, these albums have it all. Great, great band.
Thank you, Pete. Lovely to have you on. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Adding a bit of, class to my videos, So, number 3, we have, and for some people, especially the neo-proggers, this band represents prog. I think that's the key to getting at number 1 on this list is one, popularity, selling a lot of records, but most importantly, representing prog. Now, I had somebody lined up to do this one. It was the perfect person, and they didn't want to do it. I gave them nagged them, and they didn't want to do it, and it's a shame because I know this is one band that so many people out there would have loved to come on and talk about, because I think a lot of people who watch this channel, this is sort of the band in terms of progressive rock. At number 3, we have Genesis. Because they're so ubiquitous and so important, I am now talking about them for probably the 20th time on my channel. And every time I want to say something new about this band, and it's very, very difficult to say something new about this band, I don't feel I want to go through their history or talk about any of their albums. But there is an aspect of Genesis that is similar to Jethro Tull, in that, more than any other band, I think that they did not see themselves as progressive rock. Some people saw themselves as progressive. Now, we've got to remember that the term in the early 70s, when you said music was progressive, that included David Bowie and Traffic and, Fleetwood Mac, and any band that was like, not a pop band was a progressive band. But I can remember watching an interview with, I think it was Phil Collins, and it was Phil Collins, and he said that when the punk thing came along, he was sat there clapping along going, yeah, finally, somebody's come out and shown all these pretentious bands up. Look at them, it's so overblown, and then suddenly, what? What, you mean us as well? And they were surprised to be included in this. Well, at least Phil Collins was. Phil Collins and Steve Hackett are the X factors that make Genesis what they are. Steve Hackett really comes in and supplies the prog. obviously on the first album that was produced by Jonathan King, their sort of psychedelic pop band, and we can almost discount that album. But on Trespass, they suddenly find this sound. And in a way, it's very doomy and dark, and it never gets out of second gear, a little bit like Van der Graaf Generator to me. I've never been a huge fan of Trespass. And then they lose their drummer and they lose their guitarist, and they pull in two guys, Steve Hackett. And Steve Hackett comes in with, I think, an organisational aspect to his playing, a virtuosity without a doubt. And also Phil Collins comes in with a drum virtuosity that enables them to suddenly do so much more. And when they go into the studio with that lineup and they do Nursery Crime, that has always been my favourite album by Genesis in terms of prog Genesis. But in Steve Hackett and Phil Collins, we have the yin and yang within the band, right? Because Phil Collins, for start, Phil Collins has come up as a child actor. He's been brought up in the ways of theatrics. He is a true performer with more background experience than Peter Gabriel, their singer, who is out front wearing all the costumes and doing all the stuff to fill up all the instrumental sections. So Phil Collins has got that performance idea. He knows how to communicate to an audience. But he's also grown up listening to loads of soul and rhythm and blues and pop music, and he has a pop music sensibility. Without a doubt, we know that. Phil's got that there. So he's here. We got Peter Gabriel in the middle, right, who is the front of the band, and then we have Steve Hackett over here. When Peter Gabriel goes in 1974, we have these two elements, right, and they balanced each other out perfectly. And although you have to get used to Gabriel going and then suddenly Phil Collins stepping forward and now becoming in the focus of the band, what's incredible, and this rarely gets said, is when he does step forward, he's an absolute brilliant focus. It's different to Gabriel, but it's incredible. The other night I watched the live concert that they did with Bill Bruford on drums, and Phil Collins as a frontman is absolutely incredible. There's one point he comes out and does a dance with a tambourine, and he's juggling it, he throws it up on the ground, and then he does this thing, and it's all very stage school stuff. You know, he knows how to put on a performance, right? He's just a bundle of energy on that stage, and that saves the band at that point. And with Steve Hackett, they're perfectly balanced in terms of prog. And I think with Tricker and Tail and Wind and Wuthering and Seconds Out, we have Genesis at their peak in a way. Once Hackett goes, Phil Collins' input becomes stronger, and we see a move, not away from progressive rock, because I think Phil Collins is always progressive. I think there's progressive elements even on every single solo album, however schlocky and poppy they got in the 1980s. There is always an adherence to a sort of English aesthetic and a performance aspect that comes out of his background in sort of musical theatre and, you know, appearing in Beatles films and all that type of stuff. And so Genesis, more than any other band on this list, when they're faced with the 1980s, when they're faced with the post-punk, post-disco world, they are able to create a sound which is not punk and is not disco, but has elements of those in, even elements of hip-hop in, but is still restrained within this very English container. And that is always commercial gold. And so throughout the 1980s, they become one of the greatest bands on the planet. And how many albums did they sell? 200 million. And I think the feat of that, although us proggers will hate albums like We Can't Dance and Abacab, you know, we hate those albums. I love the track Abacab. I bought that as a single when it came out. But we still have to give them their due and count in that legacy. But perhaps the legacy of being so successful in the 1980s is what drops Genesis down to number 3. Right, so number 2. Again, I haven't got a guess for number 2. I haven't got a guess. It's annoyed me because at number 2 we have King Crimson. I've had such incredible guests for all these earlier bands, and they get to these big, well, you would have thought everybody would want to do these, but nobody wanted to do this, you know. Now, King Crimson, they like sort of created progressive rock, didn't they, in the Court of the Crimson King? Then they reinvented it with the John Wetton band. You know, then they went away, and Robert Fripp went all new wave, didn't he? League of Gentlemen and all that. Then they returned and did probably the only artistically serious and successful progressive rock of the 1980s with those 3 albums, you know, Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair. Then they went away again, and he went off working with David Sylvian and with his wife Toya and all that. And then he forms it again in a sort of post-grunge world and brings out a series of absolutely fantastic albums, turning King Crimson then into this long-form dinosaur of prog that's always been there and always been innovating. And Robert Fripp, we've always looked for, because a little bit like Ian Anderson, he then becomes the de facto dictator of that band. Now, they're almighty, right? In this list of Pink Floyd, Genesis and King Crimson, and yes, all of those bands, oh, I've just given away the number one, you idiot. It's bloody obvious, isn't it? You've been sat here for 2 hours going, what's going to be number one? And I let it go like that. Oh, I need some help here. I've been doing this for too long, getting tired. You know, there's something about King Crimson. There's a heaviness and darkness to them, which goes beyond heavy metal. It goes beyond like prog metal. There's a heaviness. The only other band I can think that has this sort of heaviness is the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Now, this is a discussion I have with my friend Matt Stevens, right? And Matt Stevens is the guitarist of Fierce of the Dead. He plays with me in the Tim Bonus band. And we say, you know, King Crimson is on another level. You know, there's a darkness and a heaviness there. There's an aesthetic there that sets them apart from prog. And yet, where's Matt Stevens, where is your video? Why is there no video? You see, when you're a progressive rocker like me and you're part of the progressive rock world, there's like an astral plane that we can talk on. You saw it right at the beginning of the video when I called for Scott Larday and he just appeared. Well, I'm going to do it now. I'm a man, because Matt Stevens is a busy man. He's probably out and about somewhere doing something. Let's see if I can contact him using my sort of psychic skills, because this video's got far too serious. So let's pretend I've got psychic skills. Matt Stevens, are you there? You right, Matt? Yeah, I'm nearly at the end. I know you're a bit shy, but, you know, I asked you to do a video. Well, I'm here now, and it's like, there's no video. Well, what are you doing? Shopping. Oh, can't you just do a video for me now, quick, so there's at least a guest here on the last couple, because they've been expecting guests. It's all a bit of a letdown now. It's just gone like back to one of my normal videos. All right. Okay, then. You get your phone out, and I will beam it into the visual plane of my viewers as they watch. Okay, you ready? Okay, so Matt Stevens has got his phone ready, and through the power of progressive psychic astral plane, here's Matt Stevens to tell you how much he likes King Crimson.
King Crimson, right. Yeah, it's the best idea for a band in that it's a way of doing things rather than guided by a specific genre. It's all about trying different ideas, and each lineup they try different stuff. So that's why I love King Crimson, because it's consistently new yet the same. A bit windy. Oh my god. Oh. Yeah. So I love King Crimson. I love the Red album. I love the stuff on the Live USA album where that part of Starless comes back at the end with the melody. I love the whole thing. And Andy, thanks for letting me be part of this. Speak to you soon, mate. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. God, it's that easy. I've been emailing people the last 3 weeks. Do you want to do a video on Genesis? Oh, what do I have to do? Just talk about Genesis. What do I have to say? Whatever you want. Oh, what if I say something bad? Doesn't matter, because my videos are stupid anyway. I've had Jeff Cooper earlier on when he was asked to talk about, what was it, Camel or some band like that. He ended up talking about Led Zeppelin. I put it in the video. God, some people, they take all this far too seriously, I tell you, and if they're watching this now, you know who you are. All you have to do is get up and go, yeah, like Genesis. My favourite track by Genesis is that one when they do the walk and they say how they can't dance and they do the Hofmeister Bear thing. I love that bit. So, we're at number 1. Finally. After, God, it's nearly 2.5 hours long, this is. Right, and I've given it away. Right, it has to be this band, doesn't it? Because this band is what I think of when somebody says progressive rock. Andy, what's this progressive rock that you like? What is it? This is a young person. It's like this style of the music in the early 70s. What was it like? Well, it was like these sort of posh men. And they are really good on their instruments, and they'd gone to university, so they knew loads about like things like Roman myths and English history and stuff like that. And they did these songs that not necessarily had tunes or hooks. It was more like they'd sing about, you know, old battles or maybe dystopian scientific, you know, futures, you know. And some of them didn't even sing lyrics that made sense, but the songs went on for a long time. What do you mean a long time? Like that song that Taylor Swift did that was 10 minutes. No, we're talking songs that could be like 25 minutes long. Oh my God, this sounds terrible. Well, you have to have a listen to it. I'm going to play it you, really. All right? And what would I go to play a young person? It would be the band I've got at number 1, which is, of course, Yes. And what track would I go for? Now, I think the greatest progressive rock track of all time, number 1, is Awaken. It's taken me a while to arrive at that, but I do really think that that's it. But the one I think that I would try and win over somebody to how brilliant this lovely genre is, it would be Roundabout by Yes. And a few years ago, Roundabout suddenly did become an internet thing, and all the kids suddenly liked Roundabout. It probably appeared in something I can't remember now. Now, for me, Yes contain a whole bunch of iconic musicians. Some of them are iconic by the way they sound, and some of them are iconic by the way they look. So someone like Bill Bruford or Steve Howe, I can recognise that straight away. Someone like Chris Squire is both charisma-wise, you know, a big tall thing stomping around with the bass, and that incredible bass sound that launched 1,000 bass players in the 1970s. Think of Rick Wakeman. You know, with his cape, with his silver cape, eating his curry off the top of his masses of keyboards. You know, playing all those things. You know, like this, he's playing like that, and then he's playing like that and that. You know, and he's going to have a heart attack because he's pushing all the cape and curry work too far out. You know, it's a band of superstars. And they have people come in that you forget, like Trevor Rabin, absolute virtuoso musicians that come in and reinvent the band. And Yes managed to traverse the 80s, and then they throw it all away. But 90125 is an incredible album, and it's one of my favourite Yes albums. Don't care what you lot say, it just is. And if you had ears and went and listened to it, you'd hear that they're doing exactly the same stuff that you used to do on the early 70s Yes albums. All the same stuff's there. They're a mighty band. But they have outstayed their welcome, haven't they? They have outstayed their welcome, really. And it's almost become like a joke now of poking fun at the masses of sort of mediocre Yes albums. You know, and it's a little bit like a Yes album now is a little bit like Biden coming out and doing what do they call, you know, when they have an argument with Trump. The expectations are so low now. All we want that album to do is stand there and look like it's an album and fulfill the role of being an album and being able to, you know, do what an album does. And when they don't, we all go, oh my God. Bit of politics for you. But you know what I think the real problem is with Yes? I mean, most of them are dead now, and the ones who are alive are half dead. I can't believe this has ended up with me slating Yes. But there's a reason I'm doing this, because I believe categorically that Yes is John Anderson. John Anderson is not a virtuoso musician, but John Anderson has a vision, and he had a vision for that band, and he was driven, and the rest of them followed John in the early days. He had a vision for that band. And his vision, which is particular to that band, yes, no other band has it, has almost become the embodiment of what prog is. And I believe that John Anderson is the embodiment of prog. And it's more than just being a visionary. I wouldn't even say he was a visionary. He's not a Robert Fripp or a Keith Emerson. It's his very being is what prog represents. And so I feel that the band he has at the moment, the Band of Geeks, that are out there playing the Yes stuff with John Anderson out front, when I watch those videos, there's a joyousness in those musicians that absolutely love John and are following his, you know, his vision and view. It feels like proper Yes. Whereas the real Yes science seems like perhaps Steve Howe, who was not an original member, trying to hold on and having possession of the legacy of Yes, which I don't think he possesses. I think John Anderson possesses it. So at number one, I knew I needed to have a good guest, and I have got a good guest. I've got Andy Graziano, who is the guitarist with the Band of Geeks. And I thought he would be the perfect guy to actually not only give us a brilliant assessment, because obviously those guys are all huge Yes fans, but he's currently on tour with John. So I feel very privileged that he's come on and done it. A lot of the guests that came on here have come on here because they're fans of the channel, and I find that wonderful. So I think all the Band of Geeks are fans of the channel, and I know Andy's going to be on in a minute talking to you about them, and I know at some level John Anderson will know that it's him that's made number one, and it's not my choice. It's the choice of lots and lots of progressive rock fans. And so I'm really chuffed that he is at number one. I know I'm going to make it John Anderson. John Anderson's the guy. John Anderson's progressive rock. That's the conclusion of this video. Oh, I forgot the guest, didn't I? So here's Andy Graziano. I hope that's how you pronounce your name, Andy. I'm not too sure. I'm not very good with foreign names because I'm English. But here's Andy Graziano from the Band of Geeks telling us all why he loves Yes.
Hi, I'm Andy Graziano, guitarist of the Band Geeks, currently on tour with John Anderson in these here United States. And I would like to tell you why I think Yes is the greatest of all the prog bands. Number one, 5 of the best of their instruments doing their thing together. Number 2, the vocal harmonies, lush and on point. Number 3, constant reinvention, despite changing lineups. Just think, the early days to the Yes album, Rick leading to the fusion of Relayer, the Buggles coming in to rock out on drama, Trevor Rabin and the mega success and slickness of 90125. Number 4, lyrical prowess, relentless positivity, and of course John's magical voice and his delivery. Number 5, they taught everyone else how to do it, from the mighty Rush to the humble Band Geeks. Number 6, the imagery, the album covers, the logo, they're iconic, and the music delivers on the promise of that artwork, which is something lacking in other groups. And lastly, and most importantly to me, the originality and freshness of the compositions, applying those classical principles that we hear about to pop music and succeeding at the highest level. No wasted time, no aimless jamming, there's a little bit of noise, but in only the best way. So those are my reasons, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But hey, you know what? They didn't come to number one on this list for no reason. See you guys.
And relax. Well, that was a bit of a monster, wasn't it? We're at the end of the video. Who's still watching? I mean, you're all getting on, aren't you? I'm worried that some of you might have passed away while they're watching this. If close family weren't keeping too much eyes on you, there you were sitting, you know, bathed in the memories of this wonderful genre, to only to slip away when I was talking about Can. I never talked about Can, did I? Made a little film instead. Well, this has been a bloody epic. It really has. It's been an absolute epic. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to, on the end of this video, put a list of all the people involved in this video, everybody that you've seen, everybody that has contributed to it. You're all going to have your names up at the end of this, if I can remember who you all are, because some of the patrons don't have their actual names, so I have to go and do a ton of research just to find out who they are. But I'll try my best to do that. We're done. Now, if you don't bloody put a like on this one, you can sling your hook. Go and watch somebody else. I only came to watch Pete Pardo. I mean, you're all right, Andy, but Sea of Tranquility, that's the real one, isn't it? I mean, they really know what they're talking about, don't they? You don't. I mean, you've been talking about Van der Graaf Generator, and you don't really know that much about them, do you? I mean, you don't even like them. I mean, Pete Pardo knows everything about every single progressive rock band, doesn't he? And you don't know that type of stuff, do you? No, that's true. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say? Rubbish. I've talked myself into a hole. Anyway, if you don't like it, don't like it. You don't have to put a like on it, do you? It's just there. You can just click it and do me a bit of help. You know, sit and watch the video. It's taken me a month to make this. All right? I got myself a Cardiacs t-shirt so I can represent the band that should be represented on this subliminally. I didn't actually get this. It was given to me by Shane Embry, the bass player and huge Cardiacs fan, a bass player with Napalm Death, who's also been a contributor to this. You've had legends on here, legends. So please stick a like on it. If you want to support me, no, that's I'm brain dead after this. I tell you, the next one I talk about is subscribing. So go on, subscribe. Come on, if you're not subscribed, and also. One of my patrons said that it was like #1 fan, Colin Baxter. He runs my WhatsApp group and everything. He's the #1, this guy. He said he'd been unsubscribed. So check that you're still subscribed now. Because I've got 30,000. If he's unsubscribed, there could be 1,000. 2,000. So make sure you subscribe. Click on that. That's the next one. If you want to support me and get involved in projects like this, because the patrons are working on another one now. And they're not going to tell me. I'll do whatever they say. All right? I'm not the boss of them anymore. All right? I'm just there so they can exist. You got to understand that with the patrons now. It's out of my control. You know, so they're working. They're going to work on something. Whatever it is, I will do my best to try and represent it here. They're my patrons. So if you want to do all that and become a member of all that, you can. And you can become a free member. You don't have to pay. Well, you won't get to do any of all this stuff, the fun stuff. Anyway, if you don't want to do that, you can drop some money in the PayPal tip jar that's down below. Can you tell I'm brain dead? Oh, I've got... This video has been so complex to make. It's only me making it. And as I'm talking, I'm also trying to work out how this is going to fit in this bloody Citizen Kane film thing I've made here. I'm at the end of the video. And also, I don't want to let go. I'm like Biden. I don't want to let go, you see. But you've got to go at a certain point. You've got to go. Let's have a song, shall we? And finish off with a song. I've got to tune the guitar up. That's suitably awfully out of tune. Right, you're all going to sing along with this. I haven't got a clue how this song goes, right? So I'm probably going to go wrong. But you can all sing along with me. Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I've had a little drink about an hour ago and it's gone right to my head. Wherever I may roam, to go home. Looks bloody done. Thank God for that. What should I do next then? Just pull one out at random and see what happens. Bloody hell, they'd hate if my lot would hate if I did that. They would bloody hate it. This is why I don't know about all the progressive rock bands, because I listen to other music. Oh, the world of British comedy. That'd be an interesting thing to do. Comedy albums, I haven't done that. That'd be quite good. Marty Feldman, Frank Howard, Spike Milligan, The Goons, Benny Hill. Absolutely. Tony Hancock, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. Paddy Roberts. I don't even know Paddy Roberts. It's Kenneth Williams as well. Pretty genius. What else have we got? Let's go along and see what we've got here. Oh, look at that. I've done a video on that. I didn't include that one, Surfing with the Alien. Bloody brilliant album that is. Great cover as well. Look at that. That goes against what you would expect to have on a heavy metal guitar instrumental. You know, you expect a guy with massive hair in a smoky atmosphere, you know, dimly lit, looking moody. What else we could do? Oh, look, hey, that's an idea. Peter Sellers, I've got enough albums here to do a comedy one. Definitely got 5. I wonder if I could do more than that. What else have we got? Oh, you see, I don't talk about them that much, do they? Hawkwind. Sold all my Hawkwind albums in the old day. That's the one that Ginger Baker's on, isn't it? Yeah. He didn't like it though. He just did it for the money, didn't he? They make a big deal. Everyone always says, oh, Ginger Baker's on that album. What's this little one here? That's an old one of my dad's. Oh, look at that, Errol Garner. What a player. Signature player. That is back in the day when you could play the piano, create your own style, and you could then sell records based upon the instrumental style you had. My dad signed it. He must have bought this in the mid-50s. 10-inch album. Look at that. Diddly. It's on Philips. It was pretty he bought these in France. I wonder if these 10-inch albums were like, you know, more sort of popular. Wasn't that all those Miles Davis, like Steaming and all that, weren't they? Weren't they? What's we got? Oh, look at that. You see now, I've just done a video on progressive rock. That's one of the greatest progressive rock albums ever. Why did they have Free on their list? Bloody patrons. Why have Free and not Return to Forever? They're not thinking straight, are they? They think, oh, Return to Forever, jazz rock, aren't they? Oh, I'm going to have a cup of tea, I think.